The desert holds many secrets, some ancient, others unexplainable. But few are as terrifying as the stories of skinwalkers. These creatures, feared deeply in Navajo culture, are said to embody a darkness that defies reason. 2 U.S. Army veterans in the 1970s, a drunken decision to attend a mysterious ritual in the remote New Mexico desert unleashed a nightmare they could never forget. Among the shadowy tales of the supernatural, the Navajo skinwalker stands as one of the most chilling. Mentioning these entities is considered taboo within Navajo communities across New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. The fear is not superstition, it's lived reality. In 1977, 2 Army veterans found themselves face to face with this fear, their lives forever scarred by what they witnessed in the sands of the Southwest. The story begins in Deming, New Mexico, where Thomas, a Vietnam War veteran recovering from severe lung injuries, joined an experimental medical program. He reunited with Dave Longlass, a Navajo and former Army comrade, both seeking treatment after a chemical attack in Vietnam. Their bond, forged in combat, was unbreakable, yet neither could anticipate the horrors awaiting them. During one of their frequent nights out, they met Rick, an old friend of Dave's and a fellow Navajo. Rick introduced them to the whispers of shapeshifters, beings capable of transforming into animals and wielding dark magic. Intrigued and emboldened by alcohol, the men agreed to join Rick at a secret gathering in the desert. They had no idea they were stepping into a nightmare. As the sun sank below the horizon, Rick drove them deep into the desolate wilderness. The air grew thick with tension as the truck veered onto an unmarked dirt trail. Ahead, a bonfire flickered ominously against the night sky. Armed men guarded the site, their faces grim and eyes cold. Thomas, a stranger to Navajo culture, felt the weight of his outsider status. But Rick assured him he'd blend in under the cover of darkness. Around the fire, dozens of Navajo men laughed, drank, and chanted. The atmosphere felt oddly festive, until 2 guards warned Thomas and Dave. If they ever revealed what they were about to see, they would face a gruesome death. The veterans exchanged uneasy glances, but remained silent. Rick stepped into the circle of men. A strange garment made of stitched animal skins was draped over his shoulders. He began to chant, his voice rising with the rhythmic pounding of drums. Suddenly, he threw a mysterious powder into the flames. A blinding explosion of smoke consumed the group. When it cleared, Rick was gone, replaced by a towering, grotesque figure. A 7-foot-tall monstrosity with the body of a mangy wolf and the face of a demonic mantis. The beast danced wildly, moving unnaturally close to each man in the circle. Its presence exuded malice. Thomas and Dave were paralyzed, unsure whether to run or stay. When another explosion of smoke engulfed the group, the creature vanished. Rick stood where it had been, exhausted but otherwise normal. Back in town, the veterans couldn't shake their unease. Rick refused to explain what had happened, brushing off their questions with cryptic remarks. Days later, Rick's mutilated body was found in a roadside ditch. Official reports labeled it a hit and run, but the details didn't add up. Locals claimed a deer had been hit in the same area 2 days prior, its body discarded in a nearby ravine. Thomas couldn't help but wonder, had Rick died in his animal form, only to revert to human after death? Navajo legend paints skinwalkers as protectors turned predators, corrupted by greed and power. Once heroes of their people, these witches used their abilities to defend against Spanish invaders in the 1500s. But without an enemy to fight, they turned their magic against their own, spreading fear and chaos. For Thomas, The encounter left a scar deeper than any battlefield wound. The horrors of Vietnam paled in comparison to the inexplicable events of that night in the desert. Decades later, he broke his silence, sharing his story with paranormal researchers. His account serves as a chilling reminder of the dark forces lurking just beyond the veil of the ordinary, whether you believe in the supernatural or not. The tales of Skinwalkers challenge us to confront the unknown. And in the end, the question remains, would you dare to look into the darkness, knowing something might look back? But the story didn't truly end with Rick's death. Over the following weeks, strange incidents began to unfold around Thomas and Dave. Thomas recalled hearing whispers at night, low, guttural voices that seemed to come from just outside his window, though no one was ever there. Dave, on the other hand, started noticing claw marks on his car and faint footprints in the dirt around his home. Both men dismissed these occurrences at first, chalking them up to paranoia. But as the days passed, the incidents grew more intense. One night, Dave woke to the sound of his front door creaking open. He grabbed his hunting rifle and crept through the darkened house, his pulse racing. In the faint moonlight streaming through the window, he swore he saw a figure crouched in the corner of his living room. It wasn't human. Its limbs were too long, its eyes glowing faintly like embers. When he blinked, it was gone. Terrified, Dave confided in Thomas the next day, his voice shaking as he described the encounter. Thomas, who had always been the more skeptical of the two, couldn't ignore the growing sense that something unnatural had been unleashed upon them. The men tried to seek answers from the Navajo community, but their inquiries were met with silence and cold stares. It was as if even speaking about the events invited danger. Desperate, Thomas turned to an old Navajo elder, a man known for his knowledge of the spiritual world. The elder listened quietly as Thomas recounted their story, his expression grave. When Thomas finished, the elder uttered only one warning: "You've been marked." He explained that by witnessing the ritual, they had crossed into forbidden territory. The Skinwalker had taken notice, and its presence would linger like a shadow over their lives. "Is there a way to stop it?" Thomas asked, his voice laced with desperation. The elder shook his head slowly. "You can't stop what you invited in. All you can do is endure and pray it loses interest." Thomas left that meeting feeling a chill that no amount of sunlight could chase away. From then on, every shadow seemed to harbor a hidden threat. Every sound in the night a reminder of what they had seen.